Hello, everybody. Welcome or welcome back to Tiny Tiger Collective. I am so excited to share with you today the first pen that I have added to my fountain pen collection in over a year. Indeed, the last fountain pen I bought was this Sailor Shikiori Pro Gear Slim in the Meigetsu or Autumn Moon model. This was my third Sailor Pro Gear Slim, and I reached a point in my collection where I realized I had accumulated quite a large number of pens over that past year, and I needed to spend more time using my pens, really getting to know them and experimenting with different inks and papers rather than continually watching new launches and new releases. I want to credit this community in particular around stationery and fountain pen lovers on YouTube for really helping me develop more intentional and deliberate ways of thinking about my relationship to fountain pens, as well as my practices around stationery consumption. So, around 3 weeks ago, I had an incredible opportunity to join a group of fountain pen lovers and collectors, as well as a few people new to the hobby, at a wonderful fountain pen meetup that has recently started in my local city. Not that long ago, just earlier this year, I attended my very first Journal Keepers community meetup. And it was there that I met a wonderful woman called Jo, who actually informed me that much closer to home for me was a new fountain pen group. And indeed, at the next meeting, I was able to meet Jo there, as well as a large group of really wonderful, generous people who are just as passionate about fountain pens as I am. One of the many extraordinary people that I had the privilege of meeting at that fountain pen meetup was Bryan Ang. Bryan is actually a doctor by trade, but he has developed a practice which started from a hobby of nib tuning and grinding, which has now flourished into quite a highly sought after practice where he has created a number of custom nib grinds. I knew that Bryan would be there, and I had heard great things about him actually from the people that I met at the Journal Keepers meetup a few months ago. Bryan brought along an entire collection of sample custom grinds, and I was able to go through his entire arsenal and try every single one of his grinds for myself. I wasn't expecting to pick up a new pen, but when I tried Bryan's three custom grinds, charmingly named the Magpie, the Cockatoo, and the Cassowary, I knew that I was wielding something very, very special. So, the particular custom grind that I fell in love with was the Cassowary. I fell in love with this custom grind immediately as I put nib to paper at this fountain pen meetup. It's two nibs in one and varies depending on whether you are writing at the front or when you flip the pen upside down and write on the reverse of the nib. So writing at the front creates this stunning cursive italic line. Yet when I reverse it, I get this lusciously broad architect. This was my very first time purchasing a custom nib grind. Indeed, I've even reflected on this channel in my previous videos about the prospect of being able to even try custom nib grinds feeling very out of reach for me. I hear about all these incredible international pen shows that happen around the world, but they all seem to be in these big metropolitan cities that feel very far away for me. I thought it would at least be another 5 years before I had the opportunity to travel to an international pen show, especially while my son is still quite young. And yet, within my own state and at this very local pen show, I was able to meet a nibmeister in person and have this opportunity to learn more about the talented local nibmeisters that was under my nose the entire time, and I was utterly oblivious. I will link to Bryan's socials and share a little bit more information about his 3 custom nib grinds in the video description. But needless to say, I fell immediately in love with a cassowary as I realize both the cursive italic and the architect are some of my favorite lines. Now, while my Lamy 2000 is not explicitly described as an architect nib, I've always found that the line variation, although subtle, actually resembles an architect nib. I love the way my handwriting looks whenever I use my Lamy 2000. And while my Lamy 2000 is an extra fine nib, I love the way that my new custom grind creates a much broader architect. Which for me, while is too broad for everyday journaling in small grids, especially the 3.7 millimeter Hobonichi grids, but even this 5 millimeter Midori MD grid, I think this reverse architect writer is perfect for writing subtitles and headings in my journaling spreads. Meanwhile, the cursive italic on the front writing is just perfect for everyday journaling and long form writing while creating this extra stunningly beautiful calligraphic flourish. So while Bryan is able to use one of my existing pens to create a custom nib grind, I talked to him about the different options that he offers, and I was actually quite excited to learn that he partners with Opus 88 to receive a range of their Omar and demonstrator pens, and he receives both broad and blank nibs in order to create his grinds. I've never owned an Opus 88 pen before. In fact, I've never really seen one until I met Bryan at this fountain pen meetup. I did some research about this company and I was really excited to learn that they were founded in 1988 in Taiwan by Michael Su. Initially, they manufactured pens for established pen and stationery businesses. They didn't actually sell direct to consumer. But because the quality of their products became so renowned, Michael Su began producing pens under the Opus 88 label for direct to retail sale. I would say that at its surface, this is not necessarily a pen that I would say is particularly visually arresting, although I do think it has its own elegance in its simplicity and its minimalist design. I've always had a soft spot for demonstrators, and I especially love flat top designs. So between this demonstrator and the OMA model, both of which Bryan had in stock to show me and give me the opportunity to hold and feel their weight in my hands, the demonstrator was the one that jumped out at me as a particularly appealing model. I was initially a little bit concerned that the girth of the pen might be too thick for me, but after writing with it for a few minutes, I realized it's actually very, very comfortable. Let me compare it with some of my existing pens. So, the Sailor Pro Gear Slim is one pen that I currently use every day, and placed next to the Opus 88 demonstrator, it absolutely makes this look like a pocket pen. The size difference is so stark. Even if I admit that the Pro Gear Slim is just ever so slightly too slim for me to write comfortably for very long sessions, it did seem like the demonstrator was too severe of a jump up. The most comfortable pen that I own is my Pilot Custom 823. If I had to choose one ride or die pen, this would be it. And you see, even compared to the Custom 823, the demonstrator is much larger and much thicker. So that brings me to the largest pen that I own, my Benu Euphoria in the hand-painted cherry blossom design. And I would say, actually, these two pens are very comparable. The Benu does taper a little bit towards the back. When it actually comes to the part of the pen that you would hold in your hands, you can see, in fact, my Opus 88 demonstrator is still yet thicker than the Benu Euphoria around the grip section. I'm thrilled to say, after 2 weeks of writing with my new pen, I absolutely do not feel any discomfort whatsoever with the thickness. In fact, I'm starting to wonder if I can actually stand to go much larger in all the pens that I use on a daily basis. The threads here are so incredibly smooth. And again, because of its large size, I find in my tri grip that when it's resting on my middle finger, it's actually resting in the middle of the grip section, not anywhere close to where the threads are. So there's no rubbing or scratching against my cuticles. What was so incredibly special about the experience of trying and ordering this custom nib grind from Bryan on the day of our pen meet was that he pulled out my phone and rested it on my hand as I engaged in my natural writing style. So he had me write a sentence in a way that felt comfortable and natural to me, had me stop and held my phone up in order to measure my natural writing angle. And I was a bit embarrassed to find out that while the ideal, if you could say there's an ideal, fountain pen writing angle is perhaps around 45 degrees, which is admittedly a lot lower than how many of us trained on ballpoint pens or even gel pens have learned to write. I learned that I actually hold my fountain pens at a 55-degree angle, which is quite a bit higher. But Brian took the time to measure my writing angle and actually changed his grind so that it worked best with that 55-degree angle. I was absolutely blown away by the level of care and precision that he took in the entire nib design. So, indeed, when I unboxed this pen after it arrived to me, I found it worked perfectly right out of the box, particularly on the reverse. And when I force my hand to write at a much higher angle than what feels comfortable to me, or a 45-degree angle, it doesn't work and flow as perfectly as it does at the angle that my hand naturally wants to write. Among many different firsts, this is also my first eyedropper pen. So, unlike a cartridge or even a vacuum or piston filling mechanism, this pen simply needs to be unscrewed from the nib, and you can take any ink sample that you have, like this one that Alison from Little Coco Studio sent me, and pour it straight into the barrel of this pen. An O-ring keeps the pen perfectly sealed and airtight, so there is no risk of leaking. Now, this bar inside might look like it's a piston filling mechanism, but I learned that it's actually an ebonite valve. And while that's made of ebonite, I should clarify that the feed, unfortunately, is not made of ebonite. The feed is a typical plastic feed, but this valve mechanism is made of ebonite. And this little knob is what opens up the valve, allowing the ink in the barrel to flow into the nib. And then this is what seals it off. I actually read a few reviews of this pen, and one of the complaints that owners of this pen have voiced is that they find that the squeakiness of the knob really irritating. But I was actually quite surprised to find that I really enjoy that sound. And it feels really satisfying when you feel it ease into place. Because Brian has a partnership with Opus 88, he was able to offer his custom grind plus the pen body itself, the entire unit, for a really reasonable rate. I paid $250 Australian for this entire pen. And on top of that, I'm so heartened to say that Brian offered a special deal for people at that fountain pen meetup, in which he also included postage and delivery in that total price for me. He warned me that he may be quite busy with other orders as well as his work. And so I would not expect to maybe see this pen for at least 2 weeks. And then he completely surprised me by completing the custom grind, I believe within 3 days of us meeting. And then he mailed it to me, and I received the parcel the very next day. So in Australia, I would typically expect to buy the Opus 88 demonstrator for around $190. So to pay just a little bit more than that at $250 and get a custom grind that I can't find anywhere else, it was an offer that I truly couldn't resist. Now, there was a very particular project that I had in mind for this special new pen. And I've been teasing it in this video all along beside me in my new Filofax Malden in the personal size. I saw this on eBay at the end of June after having researched and followed rings binders since the start of this year. I finally found my opportunity to own this particular rings binder, and I seized on the chance. And I've absolutely loved having this beautiful little treasure. This Filofax rings binder is for a very precious project that I have been cooking up for many, many months. I want to turn this rings binder into my commonplace book. Not just any commonplace book, but one that specifically revolves around the theme of decolonial theory and praxis. I have been slowly building the design as well as the philosophy behind this commonplace book project for the past few weeks. And pulled by the theme of this book, I have been lovingly fixated on the idea of expanding my collection and developing a really intentional, almost sacred ritual around how I'm going to develop this commonplace book. I thought that this new Opus 88 demonstrator with a custom grind would be the perfect tool to start using in my book. I want to challenge myself and see if I can expand my stationery collection as well as mine my existing items in order to cohere around the theme of decoloniality. So while I own and love many Japanese and German pens, it seemed particularly poetic that I would use a Taiwanese pen created in a custom nib grind by a nibmeister who equally felt the pull to this brand because Bryan's mother is Taiwanese. And having that legacy and that history is just so incredibly meaningful and powerful to me. I am still slowly assembling all of the tools and resources that I need to begin building up this book. I have been writing and preparing entries for it, but I still need a couple of small supplies. And I have admittedly run into a bit of a war where I've not been able to find fountain pen friendly printer paper in an Australian retailer for me to create custom inserts from. So while I continue to search for the right paper for this book, I'm nevertheless progressing ahead with researching, reading, and writing all the beautiful entries that I will eventually fill up this book. I have to thank all of you in this YouTube community for having helped guide, educate, and enlighten me around the fountain pen hobby over the past 8 months. I don't think I would have been as aware or informed about custom nib grinds and the benefits of trying different kinds of nib grinds if it wasn't for the incredible people that I've been able to connect with, all of you, through this channel. I feel so privileged and so proud to add this pen to my collection. I cannot wait to use it in all my projects, as well as my everyday journaling and letter writing. Thank you so much to Bryan for creating this pen for me. Again, I will link to all of his details in the video description if you're interested in exploring his range for yourself. And thank you to all of you for being here and letting me share this wonderful, delightful pen with you all today. This week, I have a lot of thoughts and emotions swirling around in my head as we approach August or Hobonichi season. In the month of August, Hobonichi will be teasing either a new product in their lineup for 2026 or sharing something like a use case or a functionality of their planners. After my experiences with their launch last year, I feel quite ambivalent about Hobonichi season this year. I have a lot of thoughts, many of which are unprocessed, about how I want to approach this Hobonichi launch. I would love to share a more candid video with you in the coming weeks and just talk out loud with you about my excitement and my trepidation about Hobonichi season. I would like to purchase a Hobonichi planner for 2026, but I also have a lot of reservations. And I can't think of better company than all of you to talk through some of those concerns. So I hope you'll join me in my next video when I want to reflect on my experiences using my Hobonichi planners these past 2 years and where I see myself going forward with a brand in 2026. Thank you so much for being here today. I wish you all a wonderful week ahead, and I can't wait to see you next week. Take very good care of yourselves, and bye-bye.